Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Marisol Nichols Podcast. For those of you that are watching me on YouTube, I have my ghost sweatshirt on, and that can only mean one thing. Welcome back to the show, the one, the only, the legend, Sheriff Chris Swanson.
Thank you. You're the best.
Thank you. Thank you for coming back.
Excited to go on the show.
I get excited when you're coming on the show.
I know. Thank you for having me.
My
and for
pleasure.
spreading the great word.
Thank you. And thank you for always calling me like, Marisol, I have another case. I need to talk to you. We need to get the word out. So that is what this episode is about. There is a very, very dark, evil, I don't know, what's the word? Monster?
He's been termed that.
Yeah. That you and your ghost team have recently taken into custody and taken down. And so I kind of wanted to talk about that, but I also want to slowly lead our audience into it because I know
it's heavy.
Some of these episodes can get dark. And I just want to, this is sort of my note to the audience listening. Like, I know that this is a very harsh, dark subject, and I do know this. And I know it's not easy to listen to. And so first I want to thank you for tuning in and coming back, week after week and episode after episode to learn all you can about this. But I also want to acknowledge you because I know it's not easy to listen to. And I want to thank you for doing that because I always believe that knowledge is power. And so there might be something that we say on these episodes that may lead you to, help someone else that may be in a similar situation as some of these victims that we talk about. And more importantly, help prevent this from ever happening to yourself or your loved ones or anyone that you may know. So thank you for being brave enough to tune in and listen and come back. And now back to our regularly scheduled program.
Even with these dark topics, I've seen so much death in my career. People wonder, how do you keep such a positive attitude?
Yeah.
Because I don't want any of these things to happen in vain.
Right.
Even the most horrific stories like the one we're going to discuss today, the hope that I have is that it doesn't happen again, and the fact that we got them.
Yeah.
So it is heavy, but I think there's a plus for it. And thanks for sharing your platform.
Absolutely. And it has a happy ending, which is always fantastic. So why don't you start? Because I know nothing about this. I know it like very little.
I teed it up for you.
Yeah. This man and the way he looks, and those of you that are not on YouTube watching this, please go to YouTube to watch this. Go to, marisolnichols.com, and we have a link to each episode. But, over the years, I've talked about certain people, and I talk about, they don't always look like monsters. They look like regular people. They look like, your gym teacher or your banker or your baker or whatever, meaning predators that come and show up to hurt children. But every once in a while, you get one of these guys and they really are, like there's so much evil inside of them that it's just coming and oozing out of them. And this guy, Michael Barajas, you take a look at this guy and it's just like, it's a violent reaction I get just from his picture alone. Did you say he filed his teeth down?
To a point.
So he looks, his mouth, how would you describe that? Like a dog's mouth. Shark teeth. What was the purpose of filing his teeth into shark teeth? Or did he say?
Oh, yeah. And so did the victims. The shark teeth, the filed points, the facial tattoos, the anger was to do one thing and one thing only, and that is to intimidate and dominate his victim.
Okay. Where does our story start?
Our victim escaped.
Okay.
And ran in front of a McDonald's.
Okay.
And this was her third attempt. The first two were unsuccessful.
Okay.
And when she ran down, the vehicle that came from the house of where she was barricaded inside chased her, and a bystander called 911, and that's how we got involved.
Amazing. Gosh.
This victim is not underage.
Fine.
This victim is an addict.
Okay.
And has always struggled with mental health issues, but still nobody's deserving of being raped, kidnapped, held hostage for days and days and days, and that's what happened here. Mm. She was walking down the street and a yellow Hummer drove up and opened the door, and two guys snatched her
Wow.
I normally say that human trafficking is not like the movie Taken, but in this case it was.
Right. A yellow Hummer.
Yes.
Like, if you were to say, like, okay, what's the vehicle, like the one vehicle that you probably like don't want to attract attention, what would be a yellow Hummer?
That's right.
That's how brazen
That's
or
right.
dumb these guys were. Okay, so they just snatched her.
Yeah.
Oh,
And they took her to a
this is during the day.
during the day, and they took her to her home, and they kept her in a bedroom, and they used drywall screws, and they drywall screwed all of the windows shut and the door, and they would bring in people to have sex with her in that room, and they would leave, and one after another they would bring them in, and she would be forced to have sex. The first time she tried to escape, she was unsuccessful. They got her, and when she ran out, they actually fired a shot in the air and dragged her back in, and she was there. Then she, at one point, tried to, and she did for legitimate reasons, have a medical condition, like call an ambulance for me. And it was part of that whole escape that she was thinking, how do I get out of here? Once she got into our custody and we were able to work through our hospital system yet again, because that's where we take these victims, we were able to determine who this person was. And one of the questions that we would always ask is, what do they look like?
Yeah.
And it wasn't hard to determine what it looked like. Facial tattoos, looks like a monster, bald head, evil. So we were able to put the case together, and mind you, a lot of these victims, they're already under the influence of, most of the time, fentanyl, methamphetamine. And so to detox them, it's a violent detox.
Did they give her drugs as well? Like, did they drug her up?
I don't know the answer to what she had before and what she did while they were there.
Okay.
But remember that, just somebody who is maybe understanding addictions right now, when someone's on drugs and they're now dependent on it, they don't do it to get high, they do it to keep from being dope sick. And so imagine having the worst flu in the world, and your predator or your evil overseer says, here, if you don't want to be sick, you can take this heroin. They take it willingly, but because they don't want to feel like they're dying.
Right.
So that's what happened in this case. And, I'm trying to be very sensitive to somebody who may think that, oh, she's an addict, she did it to herself.
Right.
Because that's not true.
I want the audience to understand that when you say she was forced to have sex with all these men, one after the other, I mean, how many a day? 40?
It's not uncommon that it's between 20 and 40 per day, whether it's, full sex or oral sex. That's the difference.
So for my audience to understand, this is called rape.
Yeah.
It's not consensual. She's literally forced to be raped.
Held hostage.
Held hostage.
Correct.
20 to 40 times a day.
Yeah.
In a room that she cannot leave with complete strangers.
Right.
And in your opinion, and this is what kills me, this just kills me, all the men that show up, the men that show up, they see the kidnapper. He looks like the devil. He's got shaved teeth that look like shark teeth. His entire face is covered in tattoos, and he has literally put screws in the doors to keep the girl from coming out. He unscrews the door, throws, whatever customer is coming in, screws it shut again, and this guy is perfectly willing to rape this girl. And the fact that all of these men show up over and over and over again, they know she's being held against her will. They know this is not a prostitute. They know she is not willing. It's painfully obvious. And I don't understand. And what kills me is these motherfuckers are out walking the streets.
Going back to their families.
That's perfectly fine. Okay, sorry. I just needed to vent because
I even forget about that sometimes.
God.
Because the customers are just as guilty as the traffickers.
100%. They can see. They know.
Even if they just left and called 911 anonymously. But they don't. They go on their way and act like it never happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd heard this story, and I don't know if you heard this story, but it was a 15-year-old girl She was kidnapped. She was handcuffed to the bed for days. I mean, like and trafficked from city to city to city to city and handcuffed. And every time she said a John would come, she would say, I'm 15 years old. I'm being held against my will.
Oh, yes.
And she said she went through like almost 500
Oh, my gosh.
men until finally one guy grew a conscience and called 911.
My gosh.
Like, I just don't understand the mentality.
Yeah.
All right. Sorry to go off on that tangent.
No, it's a worthy point, I'm telling you.
Thank you. Sorry about that. Okay. So she escapes. She somehow gets out.
Right.
She runs
Pick her up
across.
we get the hospital's involved.
Yes.
And he shows up at the hospital.
He does?
Yes.
The kidnapper showed up
Yes. So we have him on surveillance. And so all these things
to try to get her back?
Yes. It's they get so bold because remember, these people are property.
Right.
When your car breaks down, you take it to the dealership, right?
Right.
That you own that car. They own these people. That's their mentality.
Right. Okay, so he shows up at the hospital.
Right. So I told you she came up with, whether it's real or not, a medical issue that took her to the hospital. We have other, good human beings that are recognizing this.
Good.
And we finally get her statement, and we do another forensic interview, which I mentioned in the last episode what the word forensic means. It means criminal investigative mind. And we go pick him up. Yeah. And we obviously interview him. We don't have a chat like other ones we do. And he doesn't help himself. He doesn't help us. But her statement and what she said allowed him to be charged with multiple felonies. And he's going to prison. And we found, ready for this, a second victim who from out of state. It was his stepsister who he raped for 5 years straight when she was under the age, not even under age of 16, under the age of 13. So not only do we have our first case, but our second case with even a better victim, which is the reason why these podcasts and these platforms are so important and why I tell the story. I put the people's names and faces up because many times victims, they don't think that their perpetrator will ever be held accountable.
Right.
And that they could come back and hurt him again.
Right.
But when Ghost shows up and says, we've got him, they can come forward and know that you're protected from this monster. And that's what happened here. And our first victim, I got to admit, she's a very difficult victim to deal with. A lot of trauma. And when she sees, I told the story offline when I went to Mexico to an aftercare facility, and these victims that were in aftercare that were completely safe, we were warned that when they see our faces as white men, they may have a flashback to what happened. And that's exactly what they did. I saw it in their own eyes. Yeah. And so many times these victims, they don't trust the system because the system let them down for years. They don't trust the system because people that were in my profession, others took advantage of them. So a lot of times they just want to forget it and go back to their life.
Right.
But it's the second victim that we never would have gotten to had we not done what we're doing now and told the story.
Wow. That's huge. It's really interesting that you say that because, I think that being sexually abused is insanely common. And most people don't talk about it. Yeah. And they think, well, it's just me and I'll just deal with it and I'll just swallow it. Or they're gone now. They want to, whatever. I'm an adult now or well, they moved away or I moved away or some circumstance where it ended and they just don't say anything. Yeah. And I think what people don't realize is that if you're being victimized, there's others.
That's right.
There's more. And I'm assuming almost every single case of when you rescue someone and get someone, there's a whole slew of other people that they victimize. Would you say that's true?
Can I tell you a quick story?
Of course.
Justin McLeod.
Okay.
Flint Police K-9 officer.
Oh, no.
I was just with him 2 weeks before this happened.
Okay.
A 13-year-old girl's walking down the street in the city of Flushing, backpack, and she's talking audibly out loud to herself. A good Samaritan drives by and sees this and recognizes something's not right.
Yeah. Local
law enforcement comes. She goes into a house. They go knock on the door. What's wrong? She goes, I'm done with this. She goes, I'm done. What she says indicates that she's been sexually assaulted. They call us, the ghost team. We bring her in. Justin McLeod is her stepdad. The Flint Police K-9 officer who I was just with, okay, had been raping this girl for months and months and months.
Oh.
We ended up going to arrest him. And I'm going to tell you right now, when we arrest somebody,
Yeah.
the first thing we do is realize and recognize how they're acting. Because somebody who's innocent and didn't do it, they're going to be just pissed that this is even happening, that they're being accused of this. If somebody comes in docile, they know.
Oh, yeah.
And I know. He came in, hands behind the back. No, nobody as a police officer just come willingly, like just if they're innocent. Put his head down, we knew he did it. Took his whole statement. We put it up there, and I don't care if you're the police or not. There's no blue wall when you do wrong.
What does that mean, blue wall?
There's always this indication that cops cover for themselves.
Oh.
That don't happen in Swanson land. I don't care if you're my brother, if you're my friend. I don't care. You do wrong, don't come to me. You pay the price.
Right.
There's no law enforcement code of conduct when it comes. You're done. Now, I've known this guy. Could care less. He's not me. They say in Arabic, Isbeli, garbage.
Right.
We did the story. He gets charged with multiple felonies. 2 days later, the family friend has a daughter who lived right next door that moved away. She came forward.
Yep.
And she came forward and said, I need to tell my story. The second round of rapes came in. We charged him the second round. The third victim came in. The third victim was a visitor to the stepdaughter that came forth first. She saw the courage of the second victim and said, because she came forward, I need to tell my story.
Wow.
McLeod's in prison right now. His appeal just got denied back in October.
Yeah.
And I'm going to tell you, it's 3 victims that came forward because of one bystander that saw something and recognized that something's not right. So long answer to a short question. Are there more victims? Most always.
Yeah. Yep. I'll tell you a story. I talked about this a little bit, but growing up in my neighborhood, I had a neighbor. And that neighbor did things to girls that you can imagine that he liked to do to girls. And I've talked about this before, and I'm not going to go into a whole thing because I've talked about it before and I don't want to. But point was, I thought it was only me.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember a couple years later, there was another girl in the neighborhood and she started going crazy. We didn't know what was wrong. Like literally, she got sent away. We're like, what's wrong with her? What's wrong with her? He was doing it to her. And then all of a sudden, oh my God, he was doing it to her. He was doing it to her. He was doing it to her. It's never just one.
No.
It's never just one. God, that poor girl.
And you know what we got to remember? I mean, as adults, like right now, we're thinking with a mature brain that our age is right now. Brains don't fully develop. That's why they say survive till you're 25. When you're a 12 or a 13-year-old and you have a 13-year-old brain with 13 years of experience in the world, with 4 or 5 years that you even remember, nobody remembers the first part, we think you can rationalize or you should be able to use good judgment. No.
Yeah.
You don't have that ability built in.
Right.
It needs people like us, the guardians around, to recognize, wait a second, that dude's weird.
Yeah.
You shouldn't be doing that.
Yeah.
And just build up. If you got nothing to hide, you have nothing to fear.
Right.
We need to be out there protecting our people.
Yeah. And thank you for what you do, and thank you for doing that. Any final words for my audience?
I think that if you just listen to this episode and do nothing with it, that we both failed.
What do you think they should do?
They need to share it. They need to pick one person that you're going to sit down with and ask a question. Has anything ever happened to you? Has anybody ever sent you a message? Not if this happened. Let's stop with, because that could happen, the warnings. Let's backtrack it and ask questions. Did something happen?
Right.
I think this episode, among all the great ones you've done, focuses on what could have already been done and the freedom that you can give somebody.
Yeah.
That's what I hope they would do, is have real talk. And God forbid you come up with something you didn't expect. Don't dismiss it. Go to where the professionals are. Go to somebody who has a heart.
Also, if you think about it, that Michael Barajas' first victim.
Oh, yeah.
If she would have said something, she would have been able to go somewhere and feel like she could tell what happened too. It would have prevented the second victim. And so on and so on and so on and so on. So, I mean, I think the message is, if you see something, if you've been through something, say something. Say something, because you never know you never know the difference you're going to make.
That's courage.
Yeah.
And I respect anybody who comes forth when something, courage. One last thing so this is the PSS, all right?
Sure.
Courage doesn't mean you come forward when you're not scared.
Right.
Courage means you come forward when you are scared.
Of course. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for another wonderful episode. And thank you again to my audience. We're going to put links up below, but if you want any more information on Sheriff Swanson, please continue to go to Slavery Free World website. We'll have everything, all the links. We'll direct you to the Ghost team and everything else, wonderful work that they're doing.
Appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Marisol Nichols Podcast. And please do not forget to click like and subscribe. And a big shout out to W.D. Hahn for our theme song, Something's Gotta Change. See you next time.